Hello, B-Town. So, as I said in my series, I was meeting with each candidate and to hear their ideas, their opinions on the issues of all the great questions you guys submitted. And today, I'm meeting with John Brodowski. So, I'm going to turn it over to him. And everybody, this is John Brodowski.
Hi, everybody.
How you doing today, John?
I'm doing well.
Good. So I'm going to ask you the same questions I asked everybody else, which is, I'm going to start out with, tell us a little about yourself and your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John Brodowski, I'm currently the Deputy Mayor and Director of Revenue and Finance for the City of Bordentown. Born and raised in town. I moved away for 10 or 15 years after high school and made my way back to town 7 or 8 years ago. I bought a house on Mary Street and I still live there now with my wife Sruti.
And congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. Yep.
You're welcome.
So yeah, it's been a whirlwind 4 years. It's been an honor serving as the deputy mayor, and I feel like we've accomplished a ton in the past 4 years. And yeah, I think it's just been a really great experience. And I did want to throw a curveball at Brenna. We briefly talked about this right before we started filming, but the residents out there may have noticed a lack in my signage out there. I haven't been door knocking all that much, and preparing to start campaigning and thinking about the next 4 years. Was recently married, thinking about life priorities and whatnot, and the fact that we have 4 really good other candidates running, I decided to withdraw from this election.
Oh, okay.
So it was a very difficult decision.
I'm sure.
Really, I enjoy this work. I really love representing the city and working on its behalf. But I also know how much time and effort and dedication it takes.
It is.
And I think there are many ways of still contributing to the community, which Sruti and I will both continue doing. But I think right now, I think it's a great opportunity for someone new to step into the position and continue working on a lot of the things that I've been working on with Mayor Lynch and Commissioner Myers. And like I said, it's been an honor. And just because I have decided to withdraw this time around, like I said, plan on staying very much involved and
Good.
Would like to consider again in the future when my own life priorities allow me to do that.
Yeah.
Because it really is. It's a luxury to have the privilege to be able to dedicate your time to the city like this. So I applaud any public official, any public servant who can dedicate that much time year after year.
Well, I am sorry to hear this news. And I'm a little shocked. I know we just talked for a few minutes,
Yeah.
but I am really happy that you said, you know what, you still want to answer these questions because it's going to help the people of the city.
Right. I couldn't agree more. There's some really important questions and things to discuss here. And as someone who's kind of been in the weeds for the past 4 years, like really working on a lot of these things that have still not been resolved, but we have moved the ball forward, to use a bad sports metaphor, on a lot of these things. But it also, I'm not campaigning, so I'm not trying to sell something that might be just something that you want to hear. I kind of want to bring people behind the scenes a little bit and kind of hope to educate some people on what the city's been working on, how we can realistically address some of these things, and hopefully create a little bit of a roadmap for the next administration to continue on what we've been working on the past 4 years. So
I think that's really awesome of you to do that. Like, you still want to be involved in the town, and this is in no way like, all right, that's it. You're all never going to see me again in the city.
No, this is home.
You've worked too hard the past 4 years.
And this is my hometown. This
Yeah.
is like the reason I got involved to begin with was to try to raise the bar here. I've grown up seeing the potentials of Bordentown City, and I think that it has really caught on the past few years that this is a place people want to be. It's a place where businesses want to come. It's a great place to live, great place to raise a family, and I think we have seen that sort of shift over the past 4 years, and it's almost like the cat's out of the bag with
Yeah.
City. It's like it's become a really desirable place, and that's why I wanted to run to begin with, is to help moving things in that direction, but also to kind of to try to open the door and invite other people in. There are numerous ways that people can contribute to the community. You don't need to be a commissioner to do that, but in years past, people may have, for one reason or another, just not felt that they should get involved, or how can they get involved. And I have from the beginning hoped that by getting into a position as a commissioner to try to encourage people to also contribute, and I think we're really starting to see that.
You are. We're seeing a lot more volunteers in town and people getting involved, and that was like a question I did ask every candidate like later on. But how do you get more people involved? Like, how did you do that? I mean, how did you, when you came in 4 years ago, say, I see this vision of?
Well, I think it starts with just educating people that there are several different committees that still have many vacancies, or the committees that have kind of fell by the wayside that could be reinvigorated with anybody who has interest. But I just think sharing information, inviting people, just when you run into them, when you're out and about, word of mouth, just like saying, yeah, we could use a hand planting these trees, or yeah, come to the environmental commission meeting, or yeah, check out, we've got a Zoom link to the commission meeting. Just log on. You don't even have to turn on your audio or your video. Just tune in. And
Yeah.
I think just exposing people to realize that it's nothing to be intimidated about. The city has always been very welcoming to people who want to help out. But unfortunately, for a really long time, the residents who have volunteered, they have taken so much on their shoulders that your Kathy Shaws and your Carol Hills and your Pat Ryans and your Zig Targonskis, and there has been this core group of people and volunteers and residents in town that have brought the city so far, and we need to get another generation of people who can keep carrying that forward.
Yes.
And I think that people understand that, and for the most part, the new residents, the younger couples that have moved in, they're on board, and I feel like they're buying into what has already been established. So that there's a huge debt of gratitude to those who came before, and it's like now let's bring some new people in as well.
Yeah. So these past 4 years, how did you view your role as a public servant going into this?
Well, I viewed it as a public servant. I think a politician has an ugly word. I think it's kind of, it's never something that I think that the commissioners in town have tried to be. But I think acting as a voice of the people, listening to what people really want to happen, what priorities they would like to push forward, and trying to be that voice while you're on the stage, because it is like you're up on the podium, you're front and center, and so it's your responsibility to reflect what the rest of the city agrees with.
Yeah.
And not just that, but as a commissioner, we have to I've attended many different functions and like forums and different meetings and classroom settings, and gone to different the League of Municipalities conventions or whatnot. I've always literally put the name tag on my chest that I am representing Bordentown City. So when you're out in a larger region in the world trying to advocate for the city, to try to generate more interest here from state level and county level officials, to try to have them look more closely at us, to maybe transfer some funds our way, to get some studies going our way. I'm just an extension of the city at that point, and I think that's what any public servant should be.
With such a tough, unprecedented last year, how do you think our city did with dealing with the pandemic?
I think we did very well. As you said, it was unprecedented, and we had to pretty much make things up as we went along. And I know Commissioner Myers touched on the fact that we instituted some rotating shifts, did the same thing in City Hall. We allowed people to work from home to try to make sure that there were no outbreaks within the city ranks themselves. So we, first and foremost, the health and safety of the city employees and the workers here in town, that was priority. We wanted to make sure that we weren't responsible for an outbreak within our own ranks. But on top of that, I feel like the downtown and the city in general, we are almost in a better place now than we were before the pandemic. I think it says a lot where we had new businesses opening in the past year.
That's true.
We purchased and set up barriers in the street to allow for the outdoor dining and the extension of premises, and the small business grant program that we worked really hard to put that together. Mayor Lynch brought the suggestion of trying to figure out how we can do this thing. We came up with this grant idea, and then I worked with our tax assessor Glenn McMahon. He put together the first draft. We worked through it with Pat Ryan, the previous clerk. She came in to give us a hand, and from what I understand, we may be the only municipality in the state of New Jersey that did this locally, and we were able to do it as part of our budget. It wasn't an emergency fund that we had to borrow money for. We used our surplus. We added extra funds into our economic development line item, and we figured out a way to make it happen. We were in a fortunate position that we could make it happen. And like I said, we had to just make sure that we were covered legally, because it was not something that was done before. So we had to check all the boxes, make sure that we were doing everything properly. And I wouldn't be surprised if it gained some additional attention from other regional or national players. I think Andy Kim's office reached out and congratulated us on being the only municipality in his district to do that. And he is he may be the chair of the Congressional Small Business Committee, something along those lines.
That says something.
It's
and
that's from the city's perspective.
Yeah.
But what our business district was able to do, what the residents were able to do, we played one small part, but the whole community came together and supported each other, supported the businesses. And I think what we're seeing now, it feels to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, you work at the hub, you're out in the street, you see it feels like there is more of an energy now than there was just a few years ago. That there are more people on the streets, it seems busier, it seems like there's more interest in the city, which we're still not out of the pandemic, and we're already in a good place.
Yeah.
So.
Now, these past 4 years, as far as communication, how do you plan on reaching the residents, and how do you think communication can get better? As we were just talking about volunteers, and that's one thing I said. I just got done talking to Jen. Is I didn't even know how to become a volunteer, or that what spots are open. So how do you think communication can improve? Because I know a lot of people would like social media outlet too.
I couldn't agree more about social media. That's one of the things that I regretfully was not able to do during my past 4 years. Coming in, that was something that I had pushed as a candidate, and something that I tried to get going, and you have to have buy-in across the board. And for one reason or another, people were not completely sold on an official social media policy. But I think the foundation is there. I think people are much more open to it now, and I think over the next 4 years, I think the next administration will probably be successful, I think, in getting that going. But even remove social media from the equation. If you go back 5 years ago or so, I know oftentimes Sruti and I would be literally the only people at a commission meeting. And I think a big reason why was you literally had to go into City Hall and check the bulletin board to see when a meeting was happening. So just the fact that we have updated the website, the calendar for the most part is accurate with where the meetings are, much more transparent about when there are special meetings or work sessions or different committee meetings. When I first came into office, we really weren't even using email. It was
Really?
mostly
Wow.
phone calls or a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
But now there is a reasonable expectation. If you shoot an email to Grace or Peggy or any of the commissioners, you're going to get a reply pretty quickly. And that's something that I think we all agree that it can get better. But now that we have these email blasts going out, so if anyone isn't already subscribed, I encourage you to go to the city's homepage. You can sign up for the email blasts, but even they can be used more. So I agree, social media is a part of the puzzle, but there's also a lot of residents who don't use it. So we have to figure out how to reach as many people as possible.
It's tough. I mean, because, as we all know, there's also a lot of drama on social media.
Right.
So I'm sure that's something that could be addressed too. I mean, maybe that's a worry of some people too. I don't know. But I admin the city page, so believe me, I know.
Yeah, you said that.
I love kicking people off of there.
Yeah.
Now, I know we were just talking about the downtown. So do you think our downtown is healthy and successful? And what changes would you like to see?
It seems as though it is successful and healthy. I mean, it's from an outsider's perspective, it looks like it is. Although I know any small business owner, in a good year, it's a struggle. So even though it seems like we're doing well now, there are not very many vacant storefronts. It seems like there's a good amount of customers coming in and out. It's fragile. I feel like the downtown here, is always teetering on a store opening or closing, and any single opening or closing has a big impact on the downtown. So if we could do something better from a city standpoint, it's something that we've been working on with the Economic Development Committee and a couple grants that we've recently received that we haven't gone out for yet. I think really capitalizing on the downtown itself. Like we're drawing people here, and I think we need to create some more placemaking in town, basically making it a little bit more inviting for people to come and stay and hang out, like the public spaces downtown. We don't have very many of them, and this is something we've talked with our city planner, Chuck Latini, during the master plan discussions that have been going on. Like, how can we create these little pockets where we can encourage people not to just grab a bite and get back in their car and leave, but to stay in town, to stay and hang out, and maybe they'll go to a second shop, or maybe they'll stay and grab dinner after they just had lunch. But trying to keep people here, I think, for a little bit longer. And along those lines, just really focusing on sort of a streamlined streetscape type idea. So it's a grant that we still have pending. That's one thing that I absolutely need to stay involved in even after my term is finished. But sort of connecting the areas that might be a little bit separate. So just some wayfinding that people who are visiting town might not know that there is a Bordentown Beach down there, or might not know that there's a transit stop, or they might not know that the new municipal complex and the new state park that will be over at Point Breeze exists. Like, we should try to direct people to all the interesting places that we have in town. There's a lot to see here, and if you don't know about them here, you might miss it. So.
It's true. It's so funny you say that, because I'll go hang out at the Veterans Memorial and, just walk around town. When I see people from out of town, it's like they reach a certain point at the street on Farnsworth, and it's like, okay, well, where else can we go? And then I'll, sometimes if I'm around, I'll say, oh, you should go to see the Thomas Paine statue or go to the Heritage Trail. And they don't really know.
Yeah, exactly. Because we have all these elements here. It's just a matter of trying to figure out a way to organize it a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good idea. How do you feel about zoning and planning, and how does that impact our city?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it's something that gets overlooked a lot, but that's where the foundation for municipality kind of gets set up. I mean, here we're in a city. We are in a mixed-use city, basically. We have our downtown district, we have our highway commercial district, we have our industrial district, which is where Ocean Spray used to be, and then mostly residential throughout. But a good example
allergies.
Oh, that's right.
Sorry, I just want to say that to people,
yeah.
like, you know.
A good example of the downfalls of bad zoning. So I don't know if you remember the Elcon hazardous waste facility that was proposed right across the river. The reason that was even proposed over there is because their zoning allowed for it. So you can't wait to be reactionary for zoning purposes. Like you have to be able to see ahead and try to prevent things from coming in that might be detrimental to the city. So I think our zoning is in need of some updating. I know that they've been focusing on that at the planning board with the master plan. I think I've heard the planning board chair, Dan Kennedy, more than once say that currently it's set up that it's zoning by variance, which pretty much means anybody who wants to do anything to their property has to go before the planning board. Yeah. Because the current zoning is sort of set up almost like we're a suburban municipality. Like I live on Mary Street. You know, there's no way I could put a shed 15 feet from all of my property lines because I don't have that much room. So I know that's something that they have focused on a lot recently, and I think we'll see the results of that probably by the end of the summer or so, I would think. Okay. So
I know one thing like we see on the city page a lot is, you know, when somebody posts something about warehouses being built, like warehouses. Yeah. You know, I know it's not in Bordentown City, but it does affect us. Do you think that there is some kind of way to open up communication with, you know, not just Bordentown Township, but like Mansfield, Chesterfield, like, you know, trying to get everybody like, you know, in a communication kind of on the same page or at least informing us?
Well, yeah, so we do already have some communication with municipalities that border us. Just by law, you know, for example, if there are some major changes or zoning changes that happen in Hamilton Township, for example, we do get notified at City Hall because they legally have to tell us. Same thing with the township. If they're doing something that is close to our border, you know, we do have to be advised. But that's like your legal basic
like your bare minimum.
Your bare minimum, right? Yeah. So I agree. We do not live in a bubble, and what happens right down the highway affects us right here. And I think that's something that is probably lacking across the board, where there are not regular meetings among officials for other municipalities. I do know the township and the city meet pretty regularly. Mayor Benowitz in the township, Mayor Lynch, along with our police chiefs. I know Chief Miller and Chief Pesh, I know they work together very well and frequently. But I think to extend that a little bit further out towards Chesterfield, Mansfield, like you mentioned, as far as I know, it doesn't happen. Yeah. And that's probably to the detriment of everyone, because if something did come along that was potentially going to impact the whole region, you know, there would be a more powerful voice if it was a group of municipalities that could kind of team up on some of these more regional problems that you never know what could come across the board.
Yeah, because it's just crazy. Like, you know, all the towns border each other. So, I mean, you could be 50 feet away from the line where, okay, you're Mansfield, but I'm Chesterfield. And, you know, but it's still going to affect you 50 feet away, you know? Yeah. So I agree. Now, diversity. Do you think the residents in town are all represented with elected and appointed officials?
No, I don't. I think it has probably gotten better over the past few years in terms of trying to get more representative appointments on our committees and with city staff. But elected officials, I think, it's where we're lacking the most. I mean, this form of government, I think, the city adopted in 1907, I believe. And as far as I know, there have been 0 people of color and 2 women. That's it. In 120 years, just about 110 years. And I don't know the answer to why that is, but I feel like a big hurdle could be just asking people to get involved, telling people that we want to know everyone's opinions, and everyone's opinion matters. And we have an opportunity this year to elect a female commissioner, not just a female commissioner, a very well qualified female commissioner. And I think that would be a great benefit to the city because unfortunately I fit into a stereotypical white male point of view, and as much as I try to see things from another perspective, it's impossible.
Well, I don't fault you for that, but I'm sorry you were born that way, John.
But it's just
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
It's
You're an ally.
right. It's something that I think there's no easy answer for, but in thinking about how we could potentially address this, it's difficult for anyone to break into the Board of Commissioners when there are 3 seats, and for a long time, going way back, even into the 50s, 60s, there's been a history of long tenured commissioners. So it's difficult incumbents generally win.
Yeah.
So if you have someone who is in office for decades, that there is no real opportunity for anyone else to get in there at all, let alone someone from a diverse background who may be a minority in the community. So something that I've talked about with a few people in town is really having the city consider maybe expanding the Board of Commissioners. There are many municipalities who started with a 3-person Board of Commissioners that expanded to 5 when the population grew or the demands of the positions grew. But just imagine if there were suddenly 2 completely vacant seats in town. That would encourage people who may not otherwise, they might feel like they're not going to get in, so they won't even bother. But if there were opportunities, it may encourage people who may otherwise not want to. They might throw their hat in the ring.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that trend won't continue, and I think we're starting to see it in neighboring communities. Anika Miller was just elected in the township.
Yes,
friend, and we talked about my experience as a newly elected official, and I'm so glad she decided to run. Joey Dean in Fieldsboro is now on the Board of Education, and he brings so much to the table. We grew up together, and the fact that he decided to throw his hat in the ring as well. Those are the kinds of leaders that I hope other people see, and I'm going to follow what they have struck out and done on their own. So
yeah. As someone who has seen this before, how do we address the process of gentrification, pushing out families who have been in town for generations? Shouldn't our workers be able to live in the same town that they serve?
So that's a good question, a complicated question. First thing that I think we should kind of clarify, because gentrification means different things to different people, I think. And I kind of think there's a double-edged sword to gentrification, and there's kind of 2 parts to it. So the first part is your revitalization. That means, meaning it's happening here now, but, where there used to be a lot of vacant homes, a lot of foreclosures and houses that are just in disrepair, and there were a lot of them. And like me and Sruti, we purchased a house in foreclosure that was empty for like 8 years over on Mary Street. We fixed it up, and now we live there. But that's kind of how it starts, and it's a good thing. You want to see this revitalization, that you don't want to see this blight. You want to see new businesses that may cater to different people come in. But the downside of that is that suddenly property values go through the roof landlords can now start charging more rent. Property taxes start to climb up as the property values start to climb too. So the balance there is how do you encourage revitalization without displacement happening? So that's when people can no longer afford to pay their rent, or someone who's been on a fixed income for 20 years, suddenly now their taxes are $2,000 more and they can't quite make that jump. It's a really challenging problem that I feel like we're just starting to see here in the city. I don't know if you check real estate listings, but houses are through the roof now. I never thought that I would see a house in the city listed for $750,000. Like that just.
No, I saw one for like
unheard of.
700,000
Right.
around here. Yeah.
So-
well, even rent too. As a renter,
Yeah.
like I've had to have roommates. I'm like I can't.
So,
I
like,
can afford the rent.
I mean, we're in a tough spot here because I think a lot of municipalities who may be running into this have the luxury of new developments where they can say, we recognize what's going on here, so we're going to encourage more low and moderate income housing to be built. That's something that has been going on throughout the state of New Jersey, where the state has required a certain amount of low and moderate income housing to be built, which we would have included with the new Cranberry Park development. And if that does still go through, which I very much hope that it does, they will have to include low and moderate income housing. But that's one project that we may not see something else like that in town in a really long time. So it goes back to your zoning question. Does the city decide that even on like one-off new home construction, do we have to figure out some way to offset that with additional low and moderate income housing? Because we need to give people who are displaced from their current living situation, we need to give them somewhere where they can move to. Mm-hmm. So there is no silver bullet here. But I think it's an important discussion to start having. And honestly, before you put that question out there, I don't think that we've really been talking about it in town, because I think it's a new thing.
Some people don't talk about it, but I think people like me who work in town and, some people I work with, like the renters, we talk about this a lot, like what's going to happen when I can't afford to live in town anymore and I grew up here. I think about that a lot.
Yeah.
And, I forget if I think it was Ed, me and Ed were talking about this. I'm really lucky that I got a good deal and I got a good landlord. Who worked with me. But, that might not happen to 10 other people in town.
Yeah,
so,
and
it's tough.
Page.
Yeah.
Like people post all the time, I can't find a place under this amount for this or that.
Yeah.
And it's just.
But what do you do? Like you said,
right.
what's the answer? I don't know. I mean, you can't sit there and tell a landlord, no, you cannot charge this. It's.
Yeah. It's, and that's one thing that I think the pandemic really accelerated, because we do have people of higher means who have found out about Bordentown from some of the bigger cities, and now that remote work is a reality for a lot of people, they've decided, oh, this is a really cool place. I'm gonna buy this house, and suddenly it snowballs. So it's an important thing.
Like you said, it's a double-edged sword. It's really good for the town, like we're moving in this direction, but then, there's always pros and cons to everything, I guess.
Yeah, but I do also want to touch on the second part of that question.
Okay.
I couldn't agree more about our city employees being able to afford where they work, and that is also a very real thing. We're currently in the middle of contract negotiations, and that's one thing I have to wrap up before my tenure is finished. But we have made it a point to make sure that people are being compensated. They work hard in town. Our public works guys, our police officers, our city hall staff, and there unfortunately have been periods of time where that was sort of fixed. There was. And I think we're all on the same page that people should absolutely be compensated enough that at the very least they can afford to stay in town. So that's a conversation that is happening, it's ongoing.
Oh, good.
I think And I would hope that the vast majority of people in town agree that we need to do right by our city workers.
Yeah, good. I mean, that's nice to know that it is on people's minds, you know. Okay, another resident question. This one, everybody was really turned off by this question, but I know New York City-based buyers who are interested in Bordentown. They thought the taxes were too high to be justified by the average school ratings. Why haven't our high taxes led to a better school system as per standardized markers?
Well, I can see why people are turned off.
Yes.
And also because, I am a product of the Bordentown School District.
Me too. Yep.
And
I shouldn't put that out there. Sorry, Bordentown schools.
well, and so I understand that those standardized metrics are important for a lot of things. And I do know that our school board is working on addressing the raw numbers of things. But I also think it's important to look beyond just the standard metrics. I mean, if you look at like rankings for best places to live in New Jersey or best places to go out or this or that, Bordentown City is sometimes in like 300 range or something.
Yeah.
Really? I disagree strongly. Even though they're looking at certain metrics here or there, I don't think it fully captures what's accurate about that. So I understand the newly moving, or somebody who might be looking to move here, who look at the numbers, and it is important from a real estate standpoint, but I think we will see those numbers start to reflect more accurately the quality of education that the Bordentown schools provide. I know a number of teachers. I know they do a fantastic job.
Oh, they do, especially this past year.
It's unprecedented, and it's unfortunate that the standardized testing has become such a focus, and there's a lot more to it than that. Like, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, there was a big deal for the school districts that they were changing where kids were going to schools and what schools they would be attending, and kind of shuffling around the different grade levels and whatnot. And when that was all going on, the parents and students alike, and even people who don't have children in the school district currently, I mean, they were out in force, passionately defending the school district and talking about how much they loved the school. They wanted to make sure their child could keep going to Clara Barton or keep going to Peter Mutual. So I feel like if things were as as bad as this question suggests, that people would not have done that. People would have just been indifferent and just like wherever. But from what I saw during that, people really like what Bordentown schools are doing. So.
Before that I saw this question, I thought our schools were pretty good, actually. I always heard positive things the past so many years,
Right.
I don't know, but hey, I put it in. A question is a question.
Yeah.
How would you rate the maintenance and care to our open spaces and parks, and what improvements or changes would you like to see?
Well, all right, so I could talk for an hour about this, but I know it's already going long. In general, I think that the regular maintenance is pretty good. I think that the guys with Public Works do a really good job of keeping things mowed and cut and maintained. And I know Mr. Myers keeps a good eye on repairing the playground equipment and making sure that things are not in disrepair. But I also think that we have some really good opportunities to improve the parks and open spaces in town. And as a matter of fact, I've really tried to push that forward as the revenue and finance. So, for instance, I applied for Burlington County Parks Grant 2 years ago for West Street. It was I called it the West Street Open Parks or Open Space Project, so that I could apply for both West Street Playground and to create a new park at the corner of Borden and West.
Oh, I remember. I think this was at a meeting. I remember hearing about this.
Yeah. So the new park on the corner of Borden and West was the only parcel that got funding. So it was just shy of $90,000 to create a new park at the corner in honor of recently deceased Chief Francis
Oh,
Lee.
Captain Lee, yeah.
Yes, right. So
Oh, that's so wonderful.
we have those funds in hand, and I think next steps are to make sure to reach out to Chief Lee's family to make sure that they're involved in the design of that, and to also make sure that residents of the area can contribute and really make it another outstanding parcel in town.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this corner that has been used as a public park space, and now we can really add some amenities to
Yeah.
it. But even though we didn't get the grant funding for it, still through a bond ordinance allocated $150,000 for a West Street playground. So that small little pocket
Oh,
park.
the little park?
Yeah,
Wow, that's
absolutely.
awesome.
So that will be new equipment, new
Oh, great.
landscaping.
You never see anybody over there,
right,
you know?
right.
That'll be great for the kids there.
Yeah. So and on top of that, in that same bond ordinance, allocated money to do some improvements down at Gilder Field,
Oh, good.
which includes the scoreboard that was just authorized to be purchased last month, and some repairs to playground equipment there, but also in conjunction with a small grant that I applied for the entrance to Oliver Street Park, which it's all the way at the corner of Chestnut and Oliver. It's a pretty large parcel. It's just a big open lawn and a hill, but
Oh, okay. Yeah.
that is city-owned property that most people don't know that is theirs to use. It is a city-owned public park.
I didn't know that. I thought it was part of somebody's yard.
Well, right, and that's a common thing. So we also allocated money for that, just for...
Oh, that's great.
At this point, just basic amenities. I think we, at this point, just need some fencing to divide the border, maybe a couple benches, some lighting, just so people know that they can use it. There's another parcel like that at the end of West Union Street on Oliver. So as we've been working to design the new, we're going to be reconstructing the Oliver Street roadway, as we already have the funding for that. Tried to incorporate that little parcel as well to get some sidewalks going through there, clean up the landscaping, maybe add a little split rail fence or something.
That's
Another parcel
awesome.
that
Yeah.
people know that they can use it. And there are several of those little parcels throughout the city that I feel like, for one reason or another, it's just difficult with everything else going on. That stuff kind of just gets forgotten about sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think that honestly, over the next 4 years or however long, that's something that, as stepping out of this commission seat now, I would very much like to stay on the side of the parks and recreation.
I hope you do.
And
I
keep
really hope you
pushing
do.
on that stuff, because
Yeah.
I feel like more than ever, just having that outdoor space is so important. You know, it's
We saw that this past year.
absolutely.
You know, we need to get out there.
Yeah.
Now, parking in town. I know this is a big issue. What is your opinion on that, and what do you think could be done to improve parking here?
Well, I think it is a complicated issue. I think it's another one of those double-edged swords, that the reason that parking has gotten worse is because more people are coming to town. But I think a good way to look at it is that we don't have a parking capacity problem. We have a parking management problem. So if you zoom out and look at the city from a bird's eye view, there are plenty of parking spaces, but unfortunately most of them are privately owned. So I know Eddie had mentioned that we tried to form some partnerships with some private lot owners unsuccessfully, but I think that that's still a good avenue to go down. But on top of that, I think doing things like improving the lighting, improving sidewalks and intersections, just so that people feel comfortable parking a little further away from
Yeah.
the concentrated downtown area. Like, you may notice when people come to visit, they'll circle the same 2 blocks looking for a parking spot, because you get to that end of Farnsworth before you cross over Park Street, and that last block on Farnsworth before you get to Hilltop, it's super dark.
It is.
It's
It
not
is.
well lit, so we need to use some money that we actually have already set aside in our capital budget to add some lighting down there, to encourage, shift the downtown a little bit so that people are comfortable parking elsewhere. As part of this other outstanding grant, the purpose of it is for streetscape and parking study. So I think having an objective third-party professional look at the parking situation could go a really long way, just to really understanding how many spaces we might need. But we've already done some small things in the past few years. You know, the shuttle helps out. I don't know if it's used as much as we would like. I think the valet service that's popped up has worked well. I think there are some issues there with where they're parking those cars and might be interrupting where residents live and where they can park their cars. So I think that should be looked at a little bit more closely. But for instance, right back behind us at Hankins Alley, you know, we I went to a couple county meetings, figured out what this community development block grant program can fund. We got a grant to reconstruct that parking lot back there. I think we added 7 or 8 additional
Yeah, I saw
public
that.
spots.
Yep.
One ADA accessible spot, which those are lacking throughout downtown.
You know what? I never noticed that until you just said that. Now I'm thinking about that. That really is lacking.
Yeah. My aunt has MS, and whenever she comes into town with like we try to meet at Marcello's, and I never noticed it until my uncle was helping her out of the car. He's like, "There's no public ADA accessible spot."
That's so true.
Very glad we were able to add that. And at the end of the day, that reconstruction ended up costing the city $0. It was all paid for by a grant from the county. So
That's awesome.
you know, that's just one of the many ways we've tried to be creative about funding a lot of the stuff that has happened over the past 4 years. So
Now, I know you just kind of touched on the sidewalks a little bit. How will the issue of unrepaired, damaged sidewalks, especially on the side streets, be addressed? Crosswalks, intersection safety as well. I know that was a great study, by the way, at the meeting last week.
Right. So DVRPC, they looked at, it reached out to them. God, it was like 2018. It took a while for that for the ball to get rolling, but they looked at our big problem intersections. They looking at the crash data, looking at where the biggest problem spots are. And I mean, you and I know anecdotally that Park and Farnsworth was always bad. Burlington and Farnsworth has been bad forever. And it's funny that the data reflects that. That's where our most crashes happen. That's where most people are injured. So, I mean, I think that study that they were able to put together for us it's a good foundation. I think, it cleared up a lot of misconceptions about things. Like, I know I always thought that Burlington and Farnsworth intersection was county owned, but it's fully in the city's jurisdiction. So the next administration, if they decide that it's a priority, they can design that intersection however they would like without having to get approvals from the state or the county.
I hope so.
So if that should be a priority, but in general, something that I have tried to do with every road project that we've worked on was complete the sidewalk network. So when 2nd Street was redone, I had to push to make sure that we got that last bit of sidewalk at the end of 2nd Street. I initially wanted to wrap it all the way around Bank because that Bank Street is still missing sidewalks, but those 2 big, beautiful old oaks would have had to come out. So it's like, let's not do that now. Let's figure out something else. But we're going through the same thing at Oliver Street right now. We're trying to figure out how we can make for a full sidewalk network there, because we're missing sidewalks on Oliver Street at the end by Federal, at the end by Chestnut, and in between Anderson and West Union. So making sure that our engineer takes into consideration and knows that we have passed 2 different complete streets resolutions over the past couple of years, that our green team actually worked with a professor from Rutgers to get all of the necessary language to make sure that when we're doing these roadway projects, we are incorporating it's a sort of a trendy term. It's complete streets, meaning that it's not just for cars. That when we're constructing a road,
that's a nice term.
Taking into consideration pedestrians, bikes, if you can, cars, and other multimodal transportation. But for purposes of your question, When we go to build, and this is getting into the weeds a little bit, but this is sharing some behind the curtains stuff. When we do these roadway projects, we generally have been successful at getting Department of Transportation grants to help fund the reconstruction of the roads. We generally get about half of the cost. So we get half of the cost covered by the state grant through this grant program, and then we have to foot the bill for the rest of it. And we do that with a bond ordinance, with a capital improvement ordinance. What I've tried to do, and we have been able to do this with the Second Street project, with we should be doing with the Oliver Street project as well. When we create the language in these bond ordinances to cover the rest of that roadway project, add in additional funds for additional small projects that would not really qualify for a bond on its own. So a little extra cushion here, like for instance, Second Street, I added additional funds there that ended up being used to redo the OTB parking lot. So
that's smart.
Right. So making use of the funds while we're going to get them.
Yeah.
So some of these small side streets, like next up would be Brooks Avenue. That's been a problem for years now. So as part of a recent bond ordinance, we set aside a little bit of money to fix the sidewalks and repave Brooks Avenue. So what I would say for the next administration is to continue that way of crafting the bond ordinances. But if there are residents out there who know of places that need sidewalks or need small repairs here or there, be the squeaky wheel. I'm telling you that's the only way that things tend to happen is by residents advocating for things. So if people don't make an issue of something, generally then maybe it's okay. Maybe unfortunately, in a lot of things in life, the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
It's true.
So that's another way of trying to encourage people to get involved. Like, advocate for what you think is important, because it's more likely that the city officials will recognize that, because we might miss things.
Yeah, that's true. Do you feel it's important to have a presence in the community at events, vigils, et cetera, and why? I know I saw you at the vigil last year. Was that last summer? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you spoke.
Yes.
So, which I thought that was really great.
No, I thought that was a great event that was organized by a city resident, and she reached out to me and to Mayor Lynch and Chief Miller, and worked to make sure that it was done properly. And I've tried to work with anyone who has felt passionate about organizing something that they feel strongly about, to make sure that they know that we respect their First Amendment rights, that although some of these things may be sensitive topics that might not directly impact the city, they are important conversations that should be happening. And I think showing that you support your residents is very important.
Yeah.
And I feel like over the past 4 years, especially with the previous presidential administration, there was a lot more people who just disagreed with what was going on in the country. So I think there was a large uptick in that kind of civil rights, and I think it's a great thing that really separates us as Americans from a lot of places around the world, that we have those rights and we should be able to express them.
It's tough conversations, but they need to be had, and it's long overdue.
Right.
So tell us what you think the top 3 priorities over the next 4 years should be.
Well, a big one that's probably obvious, I would assume most of the other folks said the same thing, but the transition to the former Divine Word property, that's going to be a big deal. It's a very big deal. And that's something that the entire administration should be very proud of, that we were able to do that. In a financially responsible manner. Everything was set up and ready to go when we were finally able to make that deal happen. But I think that transitioning not just City Hall staff, but the police department and new community events out there. We have a brand new state park in our backyard, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
So I think that will be and should be a priority. On top of that, I think continuing to improve our traffic safety with pedestrian and bike safety, I think that cannot be forgotten. I feel like sometimes that it falls out of the conversation until something bad happens.
Yes.
And we can't let it be reactive again. We should get out in front of it before there's another accident. And that's something that will take years to happen because these are expensive projects. So you have to stay on that in order for those real changes to happen. And then, like started getting into earlier, from my own personal, what I would like to do personally is to really concentrate on the parks and open spaces. I feel like that is something that we have a really good potential to make some serious impacts there. Just to go off on a little tangent here, you mentioned the Delaware River Heritage Trail, which we have that trailhead, very nice trailhead at Bordentown Beach.
I saw you rode that. I was looking at your page. Yeah.
So that goes down south, through Crystal Lake Park, and eventually through to Roebling, and then it's a great trail.
Yeah.
And then down by the yacht club at the foot of Farnsworth Avenue, we've got the southernmost point of the DNR Canal State Park, which that is another major regional trail that you can take all the way up through Trenton, and then from there you can go through the feeder canal up to eventually to Washington Crossing State Park, to Lambertville, or you can go the other way to Princeton, Lawrenceville, all the way to New Brunswick. But we've got these two very important trails that have been developed all throughout this region, but they don't quite connect, and they're right here in the city. So we have a really good opportunity to take advantage of our location. And just trying to figure out how we can merge those two.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of interest in that as well, and I think that could be a really big way to draw more people to town. And whether or not this is a priority over the next 4 years, I think it should absolutely be on everyone's radar. And it doesn't seem quite possible, but in 2026, it is the 250th birthday for the United States of America. And, 1776, 250, there are already major things in the works for the state of New Jersey. And I think Bordentown City could be a showcase location from all the crazy impressive history that we have here. I know there are a significant amount of funds out there available for highlighting the history of New Jersey, and a lot of those things take a while to happen. So I think that should stay on the radar for not just the commissioners, but residents out there.
Yeah.
It's something that
Thank
could be really
you.
fun to get involved with. The Historical Society, they've already been talking about it, but that will be a big deal for the country, and just imagine,
I didn't even think of that.
it could be something that the city kind of works towards.
Yeah. So over the past 4 years, what is one of your proudest accomplishments in town here, serving?
That's a good question. I think I would have to say, from my own personal perspective, as being the Director of Revenue and Finance, I think looking back, the sheer number of things that we were able to do in the past 4 years, I would say it may be the most significant 4 years that the city has seen in a very long time. Just Willow Street, Burlington Street, 2nd Street, West Street, now Oliver, East and West Union, which will happen next year, the consolidated apron that made sure we included that in the bond ordinance. We completed this elevator. We purchased Divine Word. We did the 2 parking lots. We purchased a $1 million fire truck, new trash truck. Like, seriously, not just expensive, but significant additions to the city. And we're arguably in a better place now financially than we were 4 years ago. without having to raise taxes.
Wow.
Last year in 2020 was the first time we actually reduced the local tax in decades. And we instead made use of our surplus to offset the costs of that. But the sheer number of significant impacts we were able to have on the city in a financially responsible way, I think, is something that I'll always be proud of. So.
Well, thank you, John. Yeah. And I want to give you this opportunity to speak to the residents of Bordentown. I'm a little sad you're not running, but I totally understand. You got to get this new chapter of your life off a little, and this isn't goodbye. It's just, hey, I'm taking a break. You know. But what would you like to say to everybody?
Well, thank you for doing all this. First of all, I think it's important for people to put a face to the names that they see out there. But it really has been an honor and a privilege to serve the city of Bordentown. I put a lot of effort and involved a lot of new people, and I think that I'm excited to see where the next administration takes things. I'm excited to see where the residents take things, and I'm just excited to be a part of it. I think that it was a whirlwind of a 4 years, but I'm so happy that I was able to do it, and that you all allowed me to do it. So I want to thank all the people of the city, and I look forward to continue working on behalf of the city. I'm not going anywhere.
We want you to.
Definitely not going anywhere. This is home, and we'll continue working in whatever capacity I can to keep improving things and to keep working to improve the city in general. So again, thank you, and I'll be seeing everyone around.
Good. We better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you, John. And I want to thank you for the past 4 years. You did a lot for the city, and you put your heart and soul into it. And we all thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. It was absolutely a team effort, though. I have to say, not just to the residents, a big thanks, but a huge thanks to all the City Hall staff that, I was green. I was a newbie coming in. I had to learn from the ground up. Grace Archer has been a huge asset to the city for a long time, and she does not get nearly the amount of credit that she should. For so many years, she kept the city running. And now, behind the scenes, the stuff that
she's an unspoken hero.
Absolutely.
I should interview her too. I really should.
She's got all the details on all of this. On not just Grace, but Peggy Margaret Peak, our CFO and now administrator, she has taken on a tremendous amount of new work that was not expected of a CFO before. So she's really taken that into stride, and I feel like she's doing a fantastic job. Jennifer Smith, our tax collector, and she wears many hats. She has also been an asset to the city for a very long time, and these are the people that have allowed the city to become what it is. Fallon Burrs, our deputy clerk, Gina, the water department, Patty McGowan, the water department.
A lot of women.
Yes, oh, absolutely.
Yep.
So even though it's us guys sitting up top, women run the city, but they do it behind the scenes, and I'm looking forward to hopefully a female commissioner who could bring that female viewpoint to the front of the room. Mm-hmm. So those are people that I've worked most closely with over the past 4 years. Can't not thank Bob Erickson for the lifetime of work that he's put into the city as well, and all his public works guys. John Walls with the water department. And to go back to your volunteer question, the volunteers of the city really, they are the heart and soul. They don't get enough credit for the amount of work. There are so many unsung heroes here. Just being in this building, this was renovated, brought back to life by volunteers. They raised a ton of money, they put their own blood, sweat, and tears into this place. it says a lot that people are willing to dedicate their free time and their energy and
does.
their brain power just because they care about the city.
We love it here.
Yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
We do. Well, thank you, John. And thank you for the past 4 years. And also thank you for, taking the time to answer all these questions today.
Yeah, I hope I didn't get too much in the weeds about this.
No, you're okay. You're okay. You're okay. All right, so this has been Brenna over here from Old City Hall. And, you see John around, give him a thank you. He really put his heart and soul and did a lot of hard work for us these past 4 years. So thank you, John. And get out there and vote, B-Town. Local elections matter. Local votes matter.
Yes.
I think today was the last day to register, the 20th.
Yeah.
And if you do want a mail-in ballot, look that up if you don't want to go in person, because I think you still have a little more time left.
Can I say one thing about that?
Yeah.
About voting in general. It doesn't matter who you vote for, but as Brenna just said, local elections matter so much. And for whatever reason, nationally, I think this past presidential election, there was close to 70% of registered voters in the city voted. Really good turnout.
Yeah.
But for the past few local elections, it's something like 25% of registered voters. Get your friends to go vote on May 11th. It's important. So let's try to get those numbers up, B-Town.
We should. Thank you, John, for saying that.
Absolutely.
All right, B-Town, you have a good night. This was my final interview. I'll be posting. So, like John just said, get out there and vote. It shouldn't be at 20%. You live in this town. It's 1 square mile. We got a lot of stuff going on. So let your voice be heard. Have a good night, B-Town.